right.
I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, April 27th, 2021, and this is a voting meeting of the Prescott City Council. If you are here and would like to speak on one of the items on the agenda, please make sure to grab one of the speaker cards in the back and fill that out, and then give it to our clerk, Sarah, up here. We're going to start with an invocation from Pastor Scott Savage with Prescott Cornerstone Church and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Blair.
Oh, wow. I didn't even get to see that.
Heavenly Father, it says in your word that if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously without finding fault, and it'll be given to you. So today we pray for wisdom for this council, that they would receive it when you give it and act accordingly. We pray for discernment. Their work is not easy. We pray for them to steward the trust of this community well. We pray for them to walk in integrity in their leadership. We pray that they would value what's right over what's popular. We pray that they would use their power on behalf of those who lack it, and we pray that our city would flourish so that those who call it home can flourish. We pray that you would be sovereign and present in this meeting, and that you would be glorified by what happens here today. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to this great country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Savage. Can we do roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Scholl.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Good.
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
And Councilman Tenney.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Mayor Mangarelli is excused from the meeting.
Item 6, proclamations.
Frank Shankwitz Day, May 1st.
Kitty, you want to stand right there? You know, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure today to actually read two proclamations. And I'm going to start out with a hero of mine. I'm going to read a proclamation for Frank Shankwitz Day. Whereas Frank Shankwitz, co-founder and CEO and the first president of Make-A-Wish Foundation, passed away on January 22nd, 2021. And whereas Frank was identified as one of the 10 most amazing Arizonans, and whereas Frank was a U.S. Air Force veteran and had a long and distinguished career in law enforcement with 42 years of service, he was featured in numerous publications and television programs and received several notable awards, including the White House Call to Service Award from both President George W. Bush and President Donald J. Trump, and the Making a Difference in the World Award from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. And whereas in 2015, Frank joined 6 U.S. presidents, as well as Nobel Prize winners and industry leaders, as a recipient of the Ellis Island Medal of Honor. In 2017, Frank was presented the Unite 4 Humanity Celebrity Icon Social Impact Award. That's a mouthful. In February 2018, Frank was presented the first City Gala Hero Award. In June 2019, Frank joined 89 celebrities when he received his star on the Las Vegas Walk of Fame. Now, therefore, Greg Mangarelli, mayor of the city of Prescott, does hereby proclaim May 1st, 2021 as Frank Shankwitz Day. Kitty, you're much better looking in person than you were in the movie. So, would you guys like to say a few words? And Linda?
Kitty's not up to it, but thank you so much. We're having the celebration of life for Frank May 1st at the Frontier or the Prescott Rodeo Grounds. Thank you guys for your help with that, and we sure appreciate this proclamation. Thanks. Thank you.
And now you get double the trouble because I am going to read a proclamation on motorcycle safety and awareness month. So is Deputy out here? No, okay. Nope. Oh, come on down. I mean, what about June Summers? No?
No, everybody was busy.
All right. All right. Well, you know, I ride a motorcycle, and so this is particularly poignant for me. And I always tell these people, they always say, well, I can't get into an accident. I'm a really good rider. And I say, it's not you have to worry about. It's the car that doesn't see you. So, whereas motorcycle riding is a popular form of recreation and transportation for thousands of people in Prescott and Yavapai County, and over 325,000 people across Arizona and millions across our nation. And whereas the safe operation of a motorcycle requires the use of special skills developed through a combination of training and experience, the use of good judgment, and thorough knowledge of traffic laws and licensing requirements. And whereas it is especially important that the residents of Prescott be aware of motorcycles on the streets and highways and recognize the importance of motorcycle safety. Whereas all motorcycle riders are encouraged to continue to hone their skills no matter how long they have been riding. And whereas all highway users are being encouraged to be aware of motorcycles and safely share the roadways throughout Prescott. Now, therefore, Greg Mangarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, Arizona, does hereby proclaim May 2021 as Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month. And would you like to say a few words?
Well, sure I would.
Absolutely.
All right.
15 minutes of fame, folks.
15 seconds? Okay. My name's Dan, and I'm the coordinator for ABATE, which stands for American Brotherhood Aim Through Education. And we're a motorcycle rights organization and have been active here in Prescott since 1989. And we do a lot of community things, and we promote safety for riders as well as folks that don't see us, drivers and pedestrians as well. And we'd like to thank the City of Prescott for recognizing May as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. And it's like last year, we're going to keep going and have some fun. Be safe. Thank you much.
Proclamation 52nd Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, May 2nd through May 8th, 2021. Whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. Whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. Whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education, programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of Professional Municipal Clerk. Now, therefore, Greg Mangarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, does recognize the week of May 2nd through May 8th, 2021, as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Sarah Sipe, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. I'm going to present this proclamation to our wonderful clerk, Sarah, in appreciation of all her hard work, and especially during this pandemic, trying to make our meetings as accessible as they can be to members of the public as we're all going through this trying time. So thank you, Sarah.
Next up, we have a presentation from APS, Fire Mitigation and Summer Readiness Program.
Welcome, Mackenzie. Thank you. And hi, Darla, there in the back with APS.
Esteemed Council, Honorable Vice Mayor or Mayor Pro Tem, my name is Mackenzie Rogers, and I'm the Northern Arizona Division Director for APS. So I'm here today to provide you guys an overview of the operations APS does throughout the year to help prepare for our summer and fire mitigation season, as well as provide you and our customers information about what you can do to prepare your homes prior to fire season. Maybe. Oh, there. You said it was easy. It's just not that easy. This is the APS promise. So it's our North Star. And as an Arizona born and raised company for over 135 years, we are all in for Arizona, and reliability and safety are number one for APS. The only thing more important to us as a company than reliability is safety for our customers and the communities that we serve. Arizona, especially northern Arizona, face a heightened wildfire threat due in part to more residential developments in the forest or continued build-out of the wildland-urban interface, in combination with climate disruption and changing forest structure. So I'm here to tell you what APS is doing to support public safety in coordination with our first responders and the forest management agencies, both year-round and especially during the high fire risk season. There we go. Gotta get the right angle. This is not new to APS. For many years, we've completed the fire risk reduction measures. In 2020, our state saw over 2,500 fires across the state throughout the year. That's 700 more fires than we saw in 2019. 21% of those are in Yavapai County. Over 2,000 of these are human-caused fires, which could be a result from anything from chains dragging along the road or not putting out campfires appropriately. And about the other 500 were lightning-caused. So while fire season is unpredictable, the early numbers indicate that this is going to be a bad season. Year-to-date in 2020, like about the same time, so as of 4/21, in 2020, there were 80 fires. So far in 2021, we've already seen over 300 fires in the same time period. So that just gives you an indication of what we could have ahead of us. And seeing lightning starting already on the way here is not a good start. So APS has a plan. So as you can imagine, these fires start and spread into areas where we have equipment that we want to protect, and more importantly, customers. The APS Comprehensive Fire Mitigation Plan is broken down into 3 areas: prevention, mitigation, and response. And I'll walk through those each individually here. So every year we work on maintaining and clearing right-of-ways and our equipment to ensure that we mitigate the fuels around our infrastructure. We also complete a pole-by-pole inspection of every distribution feeder in a cycle. And each troubleman's required to sign off that they certify that they've reported all concerns on each pole. In addition to the above, each area has teams identified to patrol and correct any potential issues that could cause concern in a high fire risk area. That's over 4,400 miles across the state. 1,500 of that is in Yavapai County. During these patrols, we physically walk down every line. We even use drones and UTVs to put eyes on the condition of every piece of equipment. To help you prepare, we have a number of customer programs and tips on our website that will help you create a defensible space and allow you to work safely around our power lines when doing so. Our Defensible Space Around Poles program, or DSAP, is similar to that space around your home. It's just clearing of hazardous fuels around our equipment poles. So as mentioned, this is a picture of the DSAP program. So you can see there's a piece of equipment on this pole, and there's a clearing 10 feet all the way around that pole, which this translates to faster restoration of service to customers, but also safety of our first responders and firefighters during a fire event by keeping that infrastructure intact. We take these programs very seriously, and we've seen them work firsthand, most recently in the timber fire up in the Payson area. Here are some customer programs available on APS.com. Specifically, the Right Tree, Right Place program has tree recommendations and care instructions for customers that are landscaping around power lines. Also on our site, we have some safety tips relating to creating a defensible space around your home. And then I'll specifically call out that public safety hotline there. If you see something that looks unsafe, please call. So we know that not everybody appreciates the craftsmanship that goes into power lines like I do. So we provide a Right Tree, Right Place program that shows natural vegetation that can be planned to shield the view of the lines and provide vegetation that we all came to this area to enjoy without creating a safety concern by providing enough clearance from the lines to prevent trees from falling into the lines and creating outages. Also on our site, we have some home safety tips related to creating a defensible space around your home and ensuring that the vegetation around your house is clean and maintained to protect your house in a fire. So those are some of the items that we can all do prior to fire season, but now I'll focus on changes to our protocols during the high fire risk season. So we will be sending postcards to all customers in areas that are in these high fire risk areas that'll include safety and fire-wise tips, as well as a notification that they could experience longer than normal outages. Those went out Friday, so you should be receiving those soon. Or if you're paperless, which I recommend, you received an email from APS as well. These longer than normal outages are a result of our increased operations protocol. If a line has a fault, before we turn it back on, we ensure our first responders patrol sections of that line with additional rigor during outages in high fire risk areas throughout the summer months. This could result in longer than normal outages because these patrols are often in the middle of the night and across very difficult terrain. But we have local journeymen available 24/7 to identify a concern, and then a number of local area crews to respond to any repairs that are required. While reliability is something we pride ourselves on at APS, we recognize that this could prolong the outages in the area. We prioritize the safety of our customers and our communities above the reliability of our services. However, we're also leveraging more technology and strategically installing thousands of fault indicators across our systems. These are essentially blinky lights that will blink a light when there's a fault, and so it'll signal to the troublemen as they're patrolling where the fault is. We've added a bunch of additional devices throughout this year that allow us to quickly isolate the customers directly affected by the fault and reroute the power to the other customers to get them back on sooner as well. However, contrary to popular belief, we don't know that you're out of power all the time. So please, if you are out of power, call 602-371-7171 or report your outage on the APS app, and it'll help alert troublemen to your area sooner. So again, There we go. We recognize that any disruption of power is a major inconvenience to customers. So we're trying to get the word out in as many different ways to communicate the reason behind these changes and ensure customers are being communicated with and know the tools available as much as possible. I encourage everybody to download the APS app or go to aps.com to access our outage map. This will include updates and estimated restoration times for outages, and you can even sign up for text alerts for outages specific to your home or business. Here's some tips on what to do during an outage. Please do not approach or go near downed power lines. And it's helpful to prepare an outage bag that has a flashlight, batteries, portable cell phone chargers in the event of a storm or an outage. Also, another fun fact, food can keep fresh in a fridge for up to 8 hours or up to 24 hours in a freezer if you don't open the door. So if you keep the door closed, your food will stay fresh. Also, in the event of a longer outage, you can purchase ice bags to put in your freezer or fridge to help keep food fresh and mail the receipts to APS for reimbursement, up to 40 pounds of wet ice or 20 pounds of dry ice. And the information on where to mail that is on our outage map as well. So finally, we prepare all year round to respond in conjunction with the local fire agencies to protect our communities. We have trained, prepared local support available 24/7. Any questions?
I have one.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Not necessarily on wildfires, but before APS, when they replace a pole, how long do they leave the existing pole up that has other utilities on it so that we can get those eyesores removed sooner than later?
Fair enough. It depends on who owns the pole. So we don't own all of the power poles. We have joint use agreements with other utilities. And so when we finish a job, we send an alert to the other utilities that are jointly connected to that pole, and it's their responsibility to remove their connection, and then whoever is either the last person on that pole, or if it's owned by us, they'll notify us that they've removed their infrastructure, and then we come and remove it. For a specific one, if you wouldn't mind sending me a note
I will.
on that one, and I can
It's
push a
right
little
by
on
your
that
old
one.
substation by my office. It said BS on it, and I thought it meant bad stuff, and then I was told it meant blue steak.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Which it's National Blue Steak Month, so please, before you dig, make sure you dial 811.
Any other questions or comments from council? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mackenzie.
We're going to move on to our consent agenda. Would any members like to pull an item? Councilman Good?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to pull items C, E, and H, please.
All right. We'll pull C, E, and H. I'll look for a motion on the other items.
What were the numbers? I'm sorry.
C.
C is in Charlie, E is in Edward, H is in Harry.
C, each and that. C.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move we approve consent agenda items 8A through 8H, except for items C, E, and H.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Councilmember Rusing, can you please vote? Yes. Passes 6-0.
All right. Item C. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, this is a resolution allowing for allowance of purchasing services and merchandise from city officials and employees without using competitive bidding, with a reference that it needs to be annually approved and referencing Arizona Revised Statutes 38-503. So I did look at 38503, and that is primarily just a blanket restriction of acquiring services and products from employees and officials. I also looked at the most recent resolution referencing this particular issue, and that was approved back in January 22nd of 2019. So clearly we've gone much longer than an annual policy period, and I was just curious why we really need to continue to have this policy in the city. How often do we actually contract with city employees or officials for these small or subsequent contracts of products or services?
Well, if you're looking at me, I probably couldn't tell you the answer to that. But the statutory reference is C2, Charlie 2, that talks about that's the specific reference that it can be, purchases can be made from employees or officials. And that's just so it's clear, our current procurement code allows for the purchase up to $5,000 without competitive bidding approved by a staff person. And then 5 to 10 and so on requires 3 quotes approved by a staff person. Right. 10 to 25 is 3 quotes approved by the council, and then 25 above is competitive bidding and council. I couldn't tell you how often we use it. Maybe Mark can.
Mark could probably talk a little bit more. It's fairly infrequently, but it happens.
Yeah, it's sorry. Yeah, it's very infrequent that it happens. This is something that just has to be done every year to be on file. And yeah, you're right. The last time was in 19. We were reviewing purchase orders, and we thought we might have a related party transaction in finance. So we looked to see if it had been done in 20, and it hadn't, which is when we contacted legal and they brought it forward. Turned out it wasn't a related party, just similar names type of thing. But yeah, we research all those. It does not happen very often, but it does happen, and we need to have this adopted so that the guidance is
Why
there.
do we still need this?
I can give
State
you that
law.
answer. It was done because of guys like me that operate a business and sometimes are asked to bid on city projects and to be open and transparent, as everybody likes to use that word. Right. They put that in place that allows me to enter into a contract for less than $1,000 a year, like I'm going to get rich off of the city. But it keeps it in check to the public, knowing that we're doing the right thing up here. So they have called me from time to time from different departments to ask me to provide them with blinds, which I do, but I can't do it for over $1,000 a year.
Right.
So I guess if there was people sitting up here that were all retired and didn't have a job or doing business with the city, maybe it wouldn't be any longer needed. But we used to have a purchasing office that handled all the purchasing in the city of Prescott. And then I would sign a 5-year contract or 3-year contract on sealed bids that allowed me to do business with the city. Since we've done away with the central purchasing and individual departments do their own purchasing, we had to put something in place to, I guess, protect public confidence. So,
well, if we ever get a council dog.
Yeah. And just to clarify, this is a heavier restriction than our procurement code, much more strict. It limits the purchases to $300 per transaction and no more than $1,000 in a year, $1,000 in a year, which is much more restrictive than our procurement code is with any other company.
Well, that was my primary concern, is if it's a regulation that still needs to be ongoing and it's justified, then I don't have a problem with it.
And at the end of the day, if you don't approve the resolution, then any purchase from any related person, even if it were $200, would have to go through competitive bidding. So there's kind of an efficiency element to it as well, because sometimes there are not just elected officials, but maybe a city employee or a spouse of a city employee has a product that they can sell, because we all know conflicts of interest apply to family members. So there are those instances. I don't know if we have a number, but
it is not.
Fair.
It's revealed every year to the auditors, and again, there are other provisions where in the procurement code where if a city employee or an employee spouse is selling something to the city, they can't be involved at all in the decision to buy it. So it's not like you're bringing it forward to buy from yourself or something. Again, it is to protect the city and to protect public funds.
I just think it's appropriate occasionally to take a look at some of these ongoing revolving regulations and ask whether it continues to be needed. And if they're not, reducing regulations is something I strongly support.
Well, and absolutely, and I wish it didn't have to be adopted each year. I'm not sure why, but it's a requirement of state law.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? A motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we adopt resolution number 2021-1773, setting policy for contracts with city officials and city employees for 2021 and 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right. Item 8E, Councilman Good.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My only question on this one, I was looking at the background material, and I'm pretty familiar with the development. I think it's probably appropriate for that particular area. But I did have a question about access on this particular parcel. I could not make out from the maps that we were provided where is actually going to be access into these condominium spaces. I know frontage area is Willow Lake Road, but it doesn't look like there's access there. Is it from that alley on the side, or this other Hillsdale Road in the back?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Obviously, I'm going to have to use a pointer rather than the mouse because it's jumping all over the place. There are two access points into the property. One is in the very center between the buildings along Willow Lake Road, and the other is actually at that location that looks like an alley. So a little bit to the west, that alley location, I'm going to try the mouse to see. So there's an access point here that leads into the property. Primary access is in here, and then the circulation throughout via driveways.
So describe the ingress and egress here.
Access to this site is from both directions, east and west. You can make turns in here. And then again, circulation throughout meets requirements for both our sanitation requirements and fire department requirements for access turns and turnarounds. And then there's a separate access here that would allow access to this structure. And again, I believe this one is both east and west full movements.
Yeah, I'm just kind of concerned with the concentration of facilities there. We got Hughes Supply, Broner Way, which has the temple at the end of it, and I understand there's a potential for development at the end of that Broner Way. And then we have this new large apartment development coming online. I think they're starting to do some leasing. So additional
Correct. Yes, so that's
cross
this
traffic across Willow Lake Road with the roundabout so nearby. It's starting to be a concern of real traffic backup and potential warrants, right?
So I think we've looked at all of that with each of those independently coming through review. Our traffic engineer has looked at that. We've looked at potential for conflicts and how to avoid those conflicts. And I don't know if our public works folks are prepared to talk about particularly that aspect of it, but it is something that we study carefully with each project as it comes forward. So we have looked at the volumes, the site distances, the turning radiuses, et cetera.
Well, it looks like it's a good candidate for right in, right out. But I don't think we're here to modify the plan at this point. Did this go to planning and zoning?
Yes. It's been some time ago. Between preliminary plat and now, it's been a couple of years.
Well, I think it's another example of increasing traffic issues here with some concern about sufficient planning for them. All right, that's all my comments. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council? I'd entertain a motion at this point. Thank you, George.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve FNP 20-007, final plat for Willow Lake RV Storage Condominium.
Second.
Problem.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, and item 8H, Councilman Good.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I know that I've seen a lot of very quickly deteriorating pavement marking throughout the city. Even the article in the Courier, I think on Sunday, that was talking about the limit line markings on Gurley. And I go out there and look at those pretty frequently. And even though we frequently see vehicles that are violating those limit lines, a lot of times the markings are so badly faded, it's hard to hold the drivers accountable to understand where and when they can park. So my question on this issue is, do we really have performance benchmarks that we're applying to this contractor to make sure the marking is done well and sufficiently so that it's a substantial award, no question about it, and being able to make sure that we get the performance that we need, I think, is pretty critical.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ian Mattingly, City Traffic Engineer. So one of the major changes, I agree, we are seeing a lot of faded striping around town. Some of that is directly related to the winter that we had, and specifically the single storm that led us to probably run those roads 40 to 50 times, scrape them, all these major roads. But we've noted for some time that we've wanted to improve the striping in the city. And this is the first year that we've increased the budget. Last year, in fiscal year 21, last budget cycle, we requested and you approved raising the amount we budget annually from $150,000 to $300,000. That's why in this new contract, we see such a substantial amount of money. Traditionally, we stripe once a year, and about this time, we come in somewhere in March, and then we're done by June 30th, and we do basically all the streets in that time. The new contract provides for preset periods in spring and fall, approximately 6 months apart, to try to just improve that visibility of our striping. It's about the single least expensive thing you can do to really improve traffic safety, I think. And so that's the concept behind this new one. There are other changes in the contract. The contract used to be a pretty short document. Now it's about 38 pages, maybe 8 pages of contract language, but there's about 18 to 20 new pages regarding just quality of work, what we expect in beads, line thickness, setting forth expectations for warranty, all those things. We also have expanded it to include various types of lines and paints and epoxies and thermo that we've never specified before, which we think will be a benefit. We have Traffic Safety Inc. is the one that bid on it, and we've used them before. These changes have been discussed with him in prior years because they kind of felt like it was hard for them to put down a product that was going to look good all year round just based on the performance of paint. And so some of these changes have come out of kind of what do other cities do and what should we be doing. So it has a lot of new expectations on him for inspection, for us watching and getting exactly what we're paying for, but it also allows us to have him do it twice. So he, it's not expected that paint or whatever will last that full year under these kind of conditions and all this stuff that we encounter up here, which might be different than the valley. So I'm hoping that answered your question so far, and I'll answer anything else.
It's double the cost of the contract because we're getting striping twice a year primarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In essence, and then we've got these annual extensions that are. Do they need to be approved by council, or they're just going to be automatically approved based upon your assessment of the performance?
So if you approve it today, staff and the contractor have the right to extend the contract without coming back to council. But of course, that's pending that you approve the budget each year and add that money back in. So if you didn't add the money back in or wanted to change it or see it at any time, we would come back. But yeah, it does allow for that. It also introduces CPI indexing for them, because in the past we had a single year contract with extension options, but we never had any kind of indexing for the contractor, so he was basically stuck to those prices and couldn't make anything. You know what I mean? If prices increased or whatever. The other part is that because we're adding epoxy, we tried epoxy up at Sheldon and Gurley, where we have the triple lanes by the Circle K coming into town. We tried a new product this last year, epoxy. It lasted pretty good. It's still, it's starting to go because of all the plowing, but we've added epoxy long line and thermo long line, which we've never used for areas where we might have more traffic or just need like a 2-year warranty on our paint, on our stuff. And they've partnered with a Valley firm who has specialty in that, because TSI can't do some of those specialty work things. So they partnered with a firm out of there so they could come up and a contractor and do that for us.
Well, I think it's striping, as you say, is a pretty effective and a relatively low cost way of improving safety on our roads. So I'd like to see, at least when these do come up for extensions, maybe a report on how we're doing and whether we're really getting the performance we expect.
Okay. Yeah, understood.
So I think we can just agree on that.
No, I have some comments I'd like to make. I also pulled this, and first of all, I don't think it should have been on the consent agenda, but I pulled this, and I'd just like to make a statement that the condition of our pavement striping is a disgrace. It was a disgrace in 2019, and then we hired traffic safety in 2020. They've had a year. I don't see any changes at all. It's still a disgrace. And I called Yavapai College because their striping's beautiful, and their facilities department said that, well, they do a lot of it in-house, and then they have fan contracting come over and do a lot. So I'm sorry, I just don't see why we should hire the same people if they couldn't do a good job last year after 1 year, and it doesn't even look like they did anything. I mean, you look around the downtown, and it is a safety issue. And I think that it's time to, I'd like to just make a motion that we put this back out to bid and try again. Because I'm just not comfortable hiring these people again over and over if we're not going to get a better result.
Ian, is there any realistic thought that if we put it back out to bid, anyone else would bid on it? Are there any other contractors in our area who could do what we are asking for?
Actually, let me interrupt. There's a motion on the table, so there should either be a call for a second or not before there's any discussion about if the motion gets a second or not.
Okay, I'd like, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion that we put the FY21 annual pavement marking contract project back out to bid.
Do I hear a second?
It dies.
That motion has died. Are there any other questions or comments from council on this item?
I'll make one. I think it's imperative that the gentleman needs a chance. You know, I see the lines as well. I drive to town every year or every day, but to do it just once a year and expect more than an oink out of a pig, you're just not going to get it. So to increase the contract by double and doing it twice a year is exactly what we need. But I'd also go as far to say we could add to the contract and put an on-call painter, this company or another company. I know there's another smaller company out there to look at the intersections, which seem to be the biggest problem, to have those done maybe more than twice a year. But I think just to turn our nose and run tail for this gentleman out there when we haven't given him a chance, and we recognize as a city that we have failed giving them enough resources and having them paint enough times to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't think that's righteous either.
Yeah, just to respond to that comment, the contract does also provide for, they have 45 days in the spring and 45 days in the winter so that there's weather windows, so they can make it happen. But apart from that, the contract also provides small mobilization ability for us to call them and bring them in, or the ones from Phoenix, which we never had before. So what was happening is when we wanted something specifically done that was relatively small, they had these per unit prices that were quite low because they expected to come in and do large amounts of work. And so when we looked at other contracts around the state, they traditionally pay a mobilization. It's written so that outside of those periods, we can call them in, but we pay them a mobilization and then get them to do those things. It also lets us do epoxy at intersections where we really need safety and it's wearing out. That's why we added epoxy, long line, and then intersection painting as well. So we added some additional things that we've never tried before to get more longevity. And then there is warranty periods for paint and epoxy and thermo, but paint traditionally doesn't last more than a year in ideal circumstances. So down the valley, they would expect that paint would only last 1 year. We have weather, and that's why we're going to this enhanced kind of striping period. We need to go this route.
I spoke with ADOT, and they do SR 89 and the different roadways out there 2 to 3 times a year, and sometimes 4 based upon weather. So they don't have a set one time a year deal. They do it based upon public safety, and that's exactly what we should be doing.
Okay. And Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Craig Dossett, Public Works. So along the lines with this, so we're kind of in a situation right now where we've given this contractor black eye. We agree. Our striping right now looks horrible. When they did the striping last fall, it was beautiful. It looked great. We just went through a winter that we spread hundreds and hundreds of tons of product on our streets to assure that our streets were safe as far as ice, between cinders and our ice product. So we've had all that wear and tear, as well as our major storm. Ian said, we ran plows over Sheldon and Gurley Street these 50 times. How many times do we expect that line to take that wear and tear and stand up to that? So that's why Ian has put all of the work and effort into the new contract for multiple times a year to put the product down, warranty, the amounts of product that go down, different types of products. That's why we have all of this in the contract that we're considering now. This is a complete night and day difference from anything we've done in the past. We're responding to the situation that we are all seeing and identifying as, not a good situation. So this document and contract addresses what we're seeing needs to be fixed.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Ian. I appreciate all of your effort. It sounds like a really well thought out contract, and I appreciate our willingness to try new products and try new things and give this contractor another opportunity. Councilmember Rusing.
No more comments. Okay. Thank you.
At this time, I'd accept a motion on this item.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move approval of city contract number 2021-161.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 5-1.
All right, moving on to our regular agenda, item 9A.
Adoption of ordinance number 2021-1757, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending Title 6, Chapter 1 of the Prescott City Code entitled International Fire Code, and adopting by reference that certain document entitled the 2018 International Fire Code, which document was made a public record by resolution number 2021-1774, and also adopting by reference that certain document entitled 2021 Amendments to the City of Prescott adoption of the 2018 International Fire Code, which document was made a public record by resolution number 2021-1774, and adopting resolution number 2021-1774, approving the 2018 International Fire Code with amendments.
Welcome, Chief.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Prescott City Council, Dennis Light, Fire Chief, Prescott Fire Department. First off, I'm glad I don't have to recite what Sarah just did, because that's more than a mouthful. This afternoon's item being brought before you is the capstone of 18 months worth of effort, of the combined efforts of the Prescott Fire Department as well as our community development staff. In so much there was likely some sweat equity and perhaps a tear or two. I assure you, no blood was let in this process. I think we've gone through it, vetted it, and feel very comfortable with what we're bringing forward today. During our review process, we collectively engaged with the development community, which included architects, contractors, subcontractors, and staff, to bring forward an end product in the form of amendments relative to the core items contained in the International Fire Code. In partnership with the YCCA Executive Director Sandy Griffiths, I stand before you today with a code and amendments that has been fully vetted and embraced within our greater community. Following a vast array of stakeholder meetings, we brought forth the proposed code with amendments through one-on-one meetings with some of you, the Fire Board of Appeals, and most recently a study session here before you and the public. Codes, by their very nature, can be contentious. However, we feel we're in good place to overcome such angst by those we hold accountable to our code through our outreach. With that, I or members of the staff or staff of community development are here, as well as Sandy with YCCA, should you have any unanswered questions as we look forward to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments from council?
I just have one. Being part of the process, thanks for asking me. As I've always said before, I'd like to throw the whole thing in the trash can, but I got to commend Public Works. I got to commend community development and our contractors, Sandy at YCCA, the fire department. And what I was happy most of all is the fact of the question, when did we get rid of some codes that weren't working? The answer was yes. And here's some ones that we modified, and it made it more flexible and more realistic than just having it one way or no way. So thank you for being flexible.
Well, we greatly appreciate that too. And as we cycled through, this has cost me 2 fire marshals in one form or fashion. No direct correlation, I assure you. That all said, as current as tomorrow morning, we're looking at another situation here in town. But I think the newfound relationship that we've built within our building community will go wonders and reach out for many years to come. So thank you, Steve.
I just want to thank Deputy Chief Mosier for all his hard work on this. He's sitting humbly back in the corner there. And thank you, Sandy, for your collaboration as well. We appreciate YCCA. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Tenney?
I just think this speaks to the work that we do in our community, teaming with people instead of taking up an adversarial relationship with people in a lot of situations wherever we can. I really appreciate the outreach that's gone into that, and YCCA and their comments and their work on this, and people like Councilman Blair and others who have been a part of a team to look at what's going to be best for our community, where can we flex for one another to keep each other safe, but also not have regulations that are onerous on people. So I really appreciate the work as well.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this item, Sarah?
No.
All right. At this point, I'd accept a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move the adoption of ordinance number 2021-1757 and resolution number 2021. Yeah?
One at a time.
Well, how come they're added here together?
Okay, so we'll do the ordinance
I'll go
first.
back and say I'm not going to criticize that. But I'll go back and restart that. I moved the adoption of ordinance number 2021-1757.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Also, Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve resolution number 2021-1774.
Second.
Approving the 2018 International Fire Code with amendments.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Sandy, and the team. Great job.
Item B, please.
Approval of City Contract Number 2021-156A1 and amendment to City Contract Number 2021-156 with Sunland Asphalt for construction manager at Risk Construction Services for the fiscal year 21 pavement preservation project.
Here. No.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
And we can drag it up there.
I drag it from where?
Which one do you want to open?
This one.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Vicinity. Technology. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Eric Stewart, Public Works. This project is located on the west side of town on Williamson Valley Road and Iron Springs Road. We're going to start this project at West Shadow Valley Ranch Road and head south towards, and that's the edge of the county line where we meet the county there. We'll head down to Iron Springs Road and a little bit to the west of Iron Springs Road to meet that county line, and then down to the east to meet Gail Gardner Way. This is a fairly busy arterial and roadway, and the ADT on Williamson Valley Road is about 11,000 vehicles per day, and on Iron Springs Road it's a little busier. It's about 13,000. So as you can see, it's a busy intersection.
Are you going to do that before or after the striping?
Before.
You just can't continue to be complimentary. You just have to go from one yin to a yang, don't you? Isn't that?
Oh, like that never happens.
APS has their trouble, man. We've got our own right here.
Thank you, Craig. For a little background on this project, about a decade ago, many local agencies, as well as the city, started using this friction course that's called an ACFC, or an asphalt concrete friction course. And it has some pros and cons. ADOT loved it, and a lot of the local agencies says, well, let's try it too. It turns out that there's some advantages that we were able to take advantage of. It actually was very porous, so water hits it during storms, goes down into it and runs to the edge of the road, which mitigates hydroplaning. It also, when it was in good condition, reduced noise levels. Unfortunately, we found out, ADOT knew this, but these things were out after 5 to 7 years. Some of ours lasted a little longer than that. This one we're looking at is about 9 years old on the upper left-hand corner here. And as you can see, we recognize the disadvantages that when it wears, we actually lose the skid resistance and the noise reduction abilities that this surface offered. We also, this cannot be covered over. If you cover over it when we get snow and ice, it goes down underneath and it pops it up and leaves these little 1-inch deep potholes. So we approached this project as a CMAR project. And the reason we did that is we basically needed to find out from our community of contractors what's the best way to remove this, because you can't cover this friction course up. And so that's why we went the CMAR route to find a contractor, and we hired under pre-construction services
CMAR Services, Sunland Asphalt. And they helped us go through the process of designing this and creating specifications for what we would be doing to remove this and replace it with a higher performing friction course. Some of the things we focused on, our goals during the design of this was, one of the primary ones was smoothness. And so that when we're done with it, it's smoother than what we would have, and it would have a high performance surface, meaning that after 7 years, it's not going to wear off and look like the upper left-hand corner. The lower right-hand corner is what we're proposing. We've used all throughout town. We've used this on high volume roads like SR 89 through the Dells. And it's basically what we're proposing once we remove the existing ACFC is a new polymer rubberized chip seal coat. And the process of what we're looking at is to lower all of the utilities that are out there, manholes, water valves, etc. We're going to mill off the top 3/4 of an inch with what's called a micro mill. So we're going to get a very smooth milled surface off of this. It won't be chunky like we see on other projects. And then we'll repair any portions of the asphalt that have some failure. On Iron Springs Road, there are very few areas. On Williamson Valley Road in front of the firehouse, we have a heavily used area that we'll replace. We think there's an underground spring there that softened the subgrades. We'll replace that area as well. But for the most part, these roads are only 10 years old and plus or minus, and they're in great condition. So we won't really need to do anything to the pavement below. And then once we're done with that, we'll do some crack filling. You can see there's a very large crack here in the upper left-hand corner. And then we'll come back and place our new polymer rubberized chip seal course. And then the final treatment we'll put on this is it's basically a seal coat. It's what you see in the lower right-hand corner on top of this rubber chip. It actually kind of helps the aggregate lock together. The rubberized chip seal does that, but the seal coat actually mitigates any rock being pulled out in the future. And that's the project as a whole. I would be happy to answer any questions about this CMAR contract we're proposing.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
Well, since I drive that road every day, usually multiple times, my primary concern is when you're going to start, how long is it going to take, and when do you expect to finish it?
Great question. So we plan to start here in the next couple of weeks, and the first few weeks will be lowering manholes. When we do start, we'll start on Iron Springs Road and start the milling process there. We're planning on waiting till school's out after the holiday weekend to finish the Williamson Valley Road portion in front of the school and north. But we'll kind of see how the schedule goes. But the plan is to do it before the end of this fiscal year. And the seal coat, because we're putting down oily products, the material that we're putting down on the milled surface that holds onto the aggregate has an oil base to it. And so does the crack seal, and so does the seal coat. And so what we're going to do is go through monsoon season, let it kind of dry out, and before winter sets in, we'll come back and do the final finish coat. And so you're going to see 3 stripings. So when we're done before July 1, we're going to stripe it. It's going to look pretty good, but it'll look a little light. And then when we get through monsoon seasons, we're going to come back and do the seal coat. Then we'll do a stripe after 24 hours after that. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll let it dry out a little bit more, that final seal coat, and we'll hit with one more stripe. So we would have very good striping out there. That's the plan.
So the lane shutdowns will be primarily just between now and the end of June?
Yes, and because we have 4 to 5 lanes on both roadways, we're planning on having all access in both directions at all times.
Okay, I'll be leaving a little earlier for meetings, and I might be late from time to time. But thank you. Yeah, I know that needs to be done out there, and it actually has held up relatively well, considering when we expanded Williamson Valley Road and and I bought my house out there shortly thereafter. So it's been pretty reliable, and but it is noisy. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the planning around school being out, because traffic is already challenging with the elementary school release. So it'll be nice not to have to, think about that as well. Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. Thank you. It says here it's formulated to outperform the friction material. How long of a life do you expect this material to have?
So that might be kind of an overstatement. The friction course that is existing, the ACFC, is designed for mainline roadways. That's why ADOT uses it a lot, mostly for noise reduction and skid resistance. That will last 5 to 7 years. This rubberized chip seal, the polymerized rubberized chip seal, will last about the same length. However, when it's at the end of its service life, we can cover it up with another chip seal. Okay. So we can just add to it instead of like the friction course, we have to remove it. Mm-hmm. And ADOT's used to that, but when all these agencies got excited about this 10 years ago, no one knew how intense, labor intensive it would be to remove the actual friction course. So
right.
It was a learning process for many, many agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments from council? Is there any public comment?
No, we don't have anything.
I would accept a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve city contract number 2021-1560-15-6A1.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item C.
Approval of city contract number 2021-164 with Asphalt Paving and Supply Incorporated to complete the remaining work for the Equestrian Way water main replacement project.
Good afternoon again, Council. Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Craig Dossett, Public Works. So this item that we're considering here is to complete the remaining construction of the Equestrian Way water main replacement project. The project includes Equestrian Way. I don't know why I'm having a problem with equestrian. Equestrian Way, Equestrian Circle, as well as the intersections of Equestrian Way at both ends in LaSalle intersections. So this project was prompted by failures of the prematurely failing PVC in there, which not only caused water outages, damages from that, as well as then it completely destroyed the pavement down the street. Public Works put the project out to bid, and we were underway. We were unsuccessful at completing the project with the original contract. So then we went out to our second low bidder that submitted on the project, who is Asphalt Paving and Supply, and negotiated with them from their original bid items, as well as projects that we just most recently bid out. Because when we bid this in last fall, I forget if it was August or September, oil prices have significantly changed since then. So asphalt is not the same price today as it was then. So we had to take that into consideration in negotiating with them. So the project now will complete the water system, the pulverization, and pavement replacement for the project. Anticipated to take up to 45 days to complete the work, and then we will have a final project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. I'm sure the homeowners out there will be happy that this is completed shortly. Any other questions or comments, Councilmember Rusing?
How are the homeowners getting their water during this process?
The old system was still feeding all of the homeowners, and now the transfer from the old system to the new system is taking place to connect the services onto the new system. So it's systematic. It happens little bit at a time to move each service over to the new system, and then the old system will be abandoned.
So they've had water interruptions off and on?
There's been intermittent water interruptions, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any public comments, Sarah?
No.
I would accept a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve city contract number 2021-164.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right. Thank you, Craig. Moving on to item D.
Approval of final plat for Bradshaw Hills, a 33-lot planned area development subdivision.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sorry, I need to pull this up and get our presentation back up on the screen. Come on. Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to run this forward to the proper one since I had several of them on here at one time. This is a request for a final plat for Bradshaw Hills PAD subdivision. Final plats are a process where council makes a determination as to conformance with the preliminary plat that was previously submitted to you and approved a couple of years ago. Most of us remember the location. It is an undeveloped site at present. Proposal is to construct a subdivision on the site. And you'll recall that a preliminary plat came before you for 33 lots, a single access point off of Bradshaw Drive. And the lots are under a PAD with approximately 50 to 55% of the site as open space. And the lots are smaller than the standard for nearby developments to the east and south, but are larger than many of the other lots that we see in the general area. Property is zoned business general and single family. There's a small sliver of single family that was a residual left over. The business general allows single family development. The preliminary plat approval took into account the minimum requirements under the BG business general zoning. The preliminary plat layout is shown before you. The sort of light green area is the open space designations. They include a number of easements. Those easements are to either provide access for utilities or to protect steep slope areas that are pretty common in that area. It's definitely a steep location. Most of you have driven up that roadway, and it's a little bit of a challenge to get up there. The final plat is this drawing. It is the same 33 lots. Road locations are the same. The easement locations are the same. Access point is the same off of Bradshaw Drive. Again, 33 lots to begin with. Final plat for the same 33 lots. A reminder of council's policy on final plats. I was going to go through this with the previous one for the RV final plat. But since that one was already moving along, I didn't stop to do that. But the resolution was adopted by City Council way back in 1999 to define what is used to make the determination that a final plat is in conformance with a preliminary plat. And it's pretty specific information, but you'll notice it's also very important information. So the actual language in that resolution is there's no increase in the number of lots between preliminary and final. The exterior boundaries of the subdivision between preliminary and final remain the same, or the final is less area than the original preliminary. The exterior connections, the streets, easements, etc., are in the same area and approximately the same. The average lot size hasn't increased or decreased by more than 15% unless it's a PAD, in which case there is no percentage limitation on that change. And the nature and character of the subdivision remains the same. A single-family subdivision at preliminary plat has to be a single-family subdivision at final plat. Based on the information provided on both preliminary and the final plat, staff assures you that all of A, B, C, D, and E are in compliance. The final plat that's proposed before you today is in conformance, substantial conformance with the preliminary plat and can be approved by council. We do have some additional information if you need it. I'd be happy to talk about that. While this is not a public hearing item, there are quite a number of folks here from the nearby neighborhood who I believe have comments on the project. Again, we will continue to bring you back to these 5 points. This is your decision making as adopted by council based on these 5 issues. With that, I'll answer any questions you have now.
Thank you, George. So I just want to clarify that what we're looking for today here is substantial conformance, which you have determined this qualifies as substantial conformance.
At staff level, we've determined that it does require an action by council to make that same determination to approve the final plat.
Councilmember Reesing?
Thank you. Could you put the plat back up, please? Thank you. This has been somewhat controversial, and I just want to make a statement that I wholeheartedly support private property rights and the rights of a property owner to develop his property, because a lot of wealth has been created in this country through real estate. And that being said, this is it's been several years since it was last looked at by planning and zoning, and there has been some major changes. The road used to, let's see if I can get this up here, because it's not working. There it is. The road used to come in closer to this hairpin turn, and now it's been moved back here. And this is supposed to be, I guess, a turnaround that's kind of fire truck turnaround in there now, because there were some safety concerns.
Yes.
And then this road, is this going to be like a communal driveway, a shared driveway by those 3?
It's a fire lane, a common drive, and I can actually switch back and forth between the preliminary. This is the preliminary, and that's the final. There are no substantial differences between the two in road alignment, lot alignment, easement alignment. Again, preliminary, final.
Okay, and then my other comment is I was out there yesterday walking it, and this is about 10 feet above the road. Is this all going to be graded down so it's the same level as the road, so emergency vehicles can just access it off of Bradshaw, or is it going to still remain above grade?
It will have a differentiated grade, so it's not going to be a situation where a fire truck can drive straight off of Bradshaw. They would need to go in through the street to the cul-de-sac, and then that fire lane provides them access to those houses.
And then, Bradshaw Drive is an older road, and I didn't see any storm drains or any plans for drainage there. And this is going to have a lot of runoff. I guess this is going to be a 10-foot, some sort of a wall, retaining wall back here. And all I can see is the water is going to be directed down through here, kind of in this area. And I was wondering, did anyone the engineer have a drainage plan presented?
Yes. So between preliminary plat and final plat, a great deal of infrastructure planning occurs. Grading, drainage, roadway design are all part of that infrastructure plan. So one of the reasons why the state statute set out the process of preliminary and final plat is to let council approve a preliminary plat with the general arrangement of lots and streets, and then the developer is responsible for committing a lot of resources into designing all of the infrastructure. Those infrastructure plans have to come to us, be reviewed and approved before we bring you a final plat. So we've already looked at all of the requirements under the city's general engineering standards and the city codes relating to the design of the subdivisions before we get to this stage. So those things have been done. Grading plans have been approved. Infrastructure plans have been approved.
And then since it's going to be 33 lots, you figure 2 occupants per home. And so each person has a car, that'll be like 66 cars coming in and out of here. And with the increased traffic, I mean, it was a pretty busy road, and people were driving pretty fast. And I noticed, we have this hairpin turn here and this deep drop off into this precipice of a ravine, and there is absolutely no guardrail there at all. And I was wondering if we could, look at that and maybe get these people a guardrail, because it is basically a very dangerous turn if we're going to approve increased traffic there. If we can at least improve the road initially
That has never happened to
and
me.
get a guardrail there.
Yes, Councilmember Rusing. I saw your email earlier today, and we will look into that to assure that the roadway meets requirements, standards in there. And also, there's right in that corner, there will be some construction work associated with the water system as well in that area. So that also could possibly change it right in that area.
Okay, thank you. And then my last comment is, I guess these are all, it's zoned business general for some reason, even though I guess it's left over from when the assisted living home went in. It was one lot or something, and this
was
ended up
origin-
all getting
It
business.
was originally supposed to be a hotel resort.
Oh.
way back. Yes, it would have great views.
Yeah,
at
it
the
does
time.
have great views, but
it never developed, mostly because the infrastructure for that type of development. It
so
just
now it's
wasn't in place.
business general with a 50-foot height restriction, which is the height of a cell tower. Is the developer planning on doing 2-story houses there?
As was committed to by the developer at the preliminary plat, they're limited to 1 or 2-story homes.
But is it like for residential, it's like 35 feet? You could put a garage underneath and then have your house above in
Correct.
a residential.
35 feet would let you have a 3-story building.
Do you know if he's gonna plan on doing a 50-foot height or 2 stories, or any idea?
We do have a representative here who may be able to answer that more specifically, but he committed at the time of preliminary plat 1 and 2-story buildings only. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Councilmember Rusing, no, we don't have a plan to go 3-story. We really don't plan on doing 2-story. They don't sell quite as well, but the plan is to do single-story. We are going to be the builder as well, so there is a potential that we could, if somebody absolutely must have a 2-story, we could do that, but again, it would not exceed the 35-foot limit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Shiska.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. George, when was the preliminary plat okayed?
I believe that was 2019. And I'm sure the date's on there. I cannot read it. So it's been at least a couple of years.
And in the zoning map, there's kind of like a triangle cutout on that BG. What is that?
That was a residual piece that wasn't part of the proposal for the hotel resort and was never rezoned to the business general at that time. So a remnant zoning, its zoning designation is 12, SF12. It will be incorporated into this design as part of the plat, so it will go away as part of the subdivision plat, and it will fall under the PAD designation for the subdivision and just be incorporated into the open space and lots in that area.
So one of the things that I noticed was that the setbacks seem to be larger than in the preliminary plat. That seemed to be one of the objections that people had, was that they were asking for setback adjustments in the original, and now they're really good.
So as part of the preliminary and final plat approvals, the setbacks were adjusted during the preliminary plat process to a 15-foot front and rear requirement and 7 feet on the sides. And the final plat reflects those same 15 front and back and 7 sides. So it matches up with, again, the preliminary plat and the final plat.
Okay.
Councilman Tenney.
I just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss this in a public forum, and I know we've got a lot of good folks from the neighborhood who are perhaps going to share thoughts and maybe concerns with us. There's certainly a lot that we can talk about in terms of, is this appropriate for the neighborhood? How does this get used? Councilmember Roosing brought up some great questions about traffic, and is the guardrail, is that appropriate to take a look at that, et cetera? I appreciate all that. But just to clarify, in several minutes when we vote on this, I'm not going to be asked to vote on whether I'm pro-growth or anti-growth or whether this fits with the neighborhood or whatnot. I'm going to be asked, does our current plat plan, is it substantially in conformance with the previously approved
With the
plat plan?
preliminary
Yes?
plat. Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
Just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we go to public comment? Sarah, what do we have?
So we have a handful of public comments from members in the audience, and then I do have one public comment that was submitted previously through our portal online. We can take those in whichever order you would prefer, and then I don't have anybody in the Zoom currently raising their hand. If you are in the Zoom call and you would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you. You want to start with the members of the public first?
Why don't you read to us what you have, and then we'll go to the members of the public.
Perfect. Okay, this is from Connie Barnett. I would like to address concerns that no proper study has been conducted by the city concerning Bradshaw Drive and the impact that this development, both during construction and after, will have. The developer has no incentive to say that he should pay for the study, and it is not in the neighborhood's best interest and safety for the city to agree with the developer.
All right. I'll remind you, you have 3 minutes. And just keep in mind that what we're looking at today is whether or not this final plat is in substantial conformance to the preliminary plat.
Gary Souza.
How do you do? My name is Gary Souza. I live at 304 Double D Drive. There are several things that have changed on it. It looks like the same plan, but I was never notified. I never saw this plan before. I've spoke here before, the last time that we were able to come and talk with you. Nobody said anything about the change in the plans to us. And we really do object to it because it's on a plot that has that green area that they're giving you is not for free. It's got a spring on it. He thinks that they're going to put citrons in there. They're going to divert all the water. Once you cut the land here and you scrape it, it's open. It's going to bleed, and you can't seal it, and you can't put it back. So once they scrape this down, there is no telling where the water's going to go, where the ground's going to go, where anything is going to be stable again. And there's no study on it. So we're just guessing. Hope it works. If it doesn't, that half of the hill will just go down into the retirement home. And that's one of the problems that was there. Nobody's done a study on the traffic. Nobody's done a study on, if somebody double parks on the street out there, you can't get a fire truck down it. You can't get a fire truck down as soon as this green area gets built up again and it needs to be fireproofed. There's no way in. Unless we're going through somebody's backyard or house. There's no way in to put the fire out. If that green area starts on fire, how do we put it out? Wait till it burns the house and then put the house out? There's no way in with a fire truck if there's a car parked in the street. Everything is done for maximum ability for the contractor, but not for our safety and not for the safety of the people that are going to be living in those houses. There's just so many reasons that it's changed. I never saw this plan. I don't know where it came from. He said it's the second plan. On our master plan, we came in from the lower part of the street. The cul-de-sac was at the other end. Now that's all changed, but it's all okay. But none of us have even seen this or been able to have any input on it. It just seems like you're all informed on what you guys want to do, but not what the citizens want to do. I mean, one other thing I'd like to say is we're in the middle of a water shortage. Has anybody been on the computer here and looked at the 20-year drought they're predicting? Lake Mead might not be able to put out electricity.
Mayor Pro Tem.
For Nevada.
This is kind of off topic.
We're doing the same thing here. We're expending our water, and it's not getting replaced. In 5 years, there won't be any water.
Let's keep it to the topic of this preliminary plat,
Okay,
please.
I'm sorry. It's just that the development is just so overdone that it needs to be looked at a little bit further. We need to look at what's going to happen when these homes are in there. Where are the people going to go? You can't walk up and down the hill without getting yourself killed. So you either drive a car, if they have kids there, where are they going to go? How are they going to get downtown? Is somebody
could-
going to drive them?
If you could wrap up your comments, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Gary Palmer.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and distinguished members of City Council and Mr. Worley. Thank you so much. I support the development of Bradshaw Hills, because it's progress. But I got to say, why is it that after 5 P&Z meetings and 3 City Council meetings that we still have more questions than we do have answers? So I'll begin with the grading and drainage, as was brought up. And unfortunately, I don't have the overhead projector. But in my previous presentations and binders that I've passed out over the years, what is the grading going to be? Back in February, just of this year, just a few months ago, they brought in a excavator and they dug holes 12 feet deep. And they found out, was it bedrock down there? Could they really take that whole hillside and knock it down 30 feet so that the single level homes that they had proposed, which I'll get into in just a minute here, or less than that, would fit? And so, what do they plan to do? And we don't know that. So that's another question. So today in the final plat, all 33 lots have been increased substantially, not just a few lots, which would be constituted as a minor change, which I'll go back to a City Council meeting September 10th of 2019, where it says minor in nature and so on and so forth. So when we talk about the A, B, C, D, E, to me, they've increased the lots by 20,000 square feet. What they've done is they've added 10 feet in length to every single lot, not just 6 or 5 or 3 or so on and so forth. So to me, it's a major change. Also on the table, in the 11th hour, are 2-story homes. And the little red line that you see here, that's the increase of the lot size, and it goes over the whole property. And so it's just, back in the day, David Brenner, he drew a little house when they cut the little hillside down. If they're going to do it, I don't even know if they're going to do it. But he drew the little house. But I have to go back and say that I'm going to quote Mr. Brenner from the minutes of P&Z meeting on May 30th of 2019. And in the quote, building heights would be 15 to 20 feet maximum. And I'm also going to quote Mr. Kraxenberg from the minutes of the P&Z meeting August 8th of 2019. And he said, there is not a market for 2-story homes, so we are not interested in building them. And now in the 11th hour, we are dealing with, included in there, 2-story homes, 50 feet. Are they going to cut the hill down to bury those homes in there or not? So
If you could wrap up your comments, please. Thank you.
from my point of view, the goalposts keep moving. The final plat is not in substantial conformance with the preliminary plat, in that they aren't minor changes, but substantial ones. So I respectfully ask council to please send this back to planning and zoning for public comment and recommendation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
John Olson.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, good afternoon.
My name is John Olson, and I live in Prescott at 302 Double D Drive. I am here to request that you return this proposal back to the Planning and Zoning for full and this time complete public review. While I don't agree with the P&Z Commission's recommendation, my main objection here, is that public input was handicapped by a lack of notification. The developer's initial proposal was called Prescott View and included a very high-density housing tract, mass-graded with super small lots, 2 entrances to Bradshaw Drive, and a couple of townhouses that might well have been unbuildable. The neighbors all received mailed notifications of a hearing, so good on you for that. The spontaneous result was 25 or 26 letters of opposition, and this meeting room was filled to overflowing. This apparently had an effect because the Planning and Zoning Commissioners were all opposed, suggesting instead that the appropriate development density for this property would be very low indeed. More significant is that I remember specifically asking the planning member after this meeting to notify the neighborhood by mail if the developer ever submitted a new proposal. He promised he would, but in actual fact, nobody has ever received any notification of any kind since that initial rejected proposal. Well, the developer did eventually resubmit, this time as Bradshaw Hills. They'd cut the townhouses in one entrance. The very high-density housing development, masqueraded on super small slots, still stayed the same. Considering the minimal change of scope, we were beyond astounded when the Planning and Zoning Committee decided to completely reverse their earlier position and recommended approval. Had a neighbor not been checking their agenda occasionally, we would have never known about this meeting, and the Bradshaw Hills proposal would have just slipped right on through without anybody knowing. Without an organization in place, the few days' notice we did have allowed for only perfunctory and incoherent opposition and a lesser turnout too. Could we have done better had we more time? You betcha. Would it have made any difference? I honestly don't know, since I'm totally baffled by the about face. I do know that I and many other folks were disappointed by how this was handled and disheartened too. Trust in our local government took a big hit. There are only a few routes in and out of this part of town, so most all of us living up there's got to be hundreds of folks, but you'd have a better head count than I. Many of us drive on Bradshaw almost every day, and when we see that housing development coming soon sign, we're almost daily reminded of the short shrift we got, and it rankles. So, would going back to P&Z result in any changes? The cynic in me says probably not. But you know, insanity has been defined as repeating an action and expecting a different outcome. So maybe my appeal here is too. But that is a big but, a very big but. The developer did go back to P&Z with what was essentially a repeated and almost duplicate proposal and got a radically different result. If it happened once, it just might happen again. At a minimum, I'd like to hear an explanation as to why the commissioners had such a radical change of heart, but also to have the opportunity to discuss that change of heart a bit further.
If you could wrap up your comments, please.
Oh, and while you're at it, you might want to reconsider the zoning on this property too. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Diana Souza.
Thank you. I really don't have that much to say except to say that I oppose.
All right. Thank you. Any other?
I do have a hand raised in the Zoom call, and it's Connie Barnett. Miss Barnett, your comments were already read. I don't know if we want to see if she has anything to add.
She has something to add quickly.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to amend my comments. Up until this morning, I had been unable to see a copy of the report done on the traffic study. I did speak with the city traffic engineer this morning, who explained the fact that the city is confident that the study was done properly and that there will be no impact by this development on the safety and condition of Bradshaw Drive. I'd like to just give a couple of brief comments, concerns. Having lived here for 15 years and walked dogs on Bradshaw every day of those 15 years, I have seen a lot of issues with this road. And my concern is that the study was incomplete. It was not based on an actual study, physical study done in our neighborhood, but on tables and whatnot. I'm not trying to suggest that the city is like my previous comments. I apologize. I do believe the city thinks that they have done the right thing, but as a resident of this area, I feel like it is extremely dangerous, that the traffic impact studies is erroneous. It does not take into consideration much of what goes on here. And my biggest concern at this point is, in addition to what will happen after those 33 homes have been built, I have to know, how long will this process go on? Will the homes be built at one time, or will they be selling lots and building continually over years to come? Because I've seen too many trucks, particularly last summer when Bradshaw was a detour, coming up that hill slowly with multiple cars backed up behind them. And when I think of the amount of construction traffic that is going to be there for an extended period of time to actually build this development, I see some extremely serious concerns. The councilwoman has already referred to the fact that that curve has no protection. I almost went off that curve once because a dirt truck came around speeding into my lane, and I pulled over as far as I could to avoid being hit. That is not an uncommon situation. In any case, I don't want to go on. I've got lots of examples, but I understand your agenda is about the plat per se. So I would very much support this going back to P&Z and having the residents of this area have the opportunity to give more intensive feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. George, what would happen today if, let's say, this final plat wasn't approved? What would happen?
There are a couple of different options. One would be for, and I'm sure if you don't approve it, you will tell us why you're voting no on it. The developer could modify his final plat and bring it back to you. He would still be subject to these 5 criteria, so he can't modify it very much. It has to stay in substantial conformance to the preliminary plat. If it changed to a greater degree where these 5 items are no longer applicable, or any one of these 5 items are no longer applicable, it could go back to and back through a preliminary plat process, which would start with the Planning Commission. So a quick recap of what's happened with this and some discussion about our processes for plats. The initial submittal to the city was for a rezoning to change the designation from business general to something that would allow the combination of multifamily and single family. That rezoning is a public hearing process. We notify neighboring property owners of rezonings. The Planning Commission disagreed wholeheartedly with the rezoning of the property to allow for that type of development. So that was withdrawn, and sometime later a subdivision plat, a preliminary plat, was submitted to us without changing the zoning. Planning processes, because of the way state law is worded and because of the city code, are not public hearing items. We do not notice the public because it is a right of a property owner to design their property and submit it through the review process. Preliminary plats go to the Planning Commission first for a review and recommendation, and then they come to you. The number of visits to the Planning Commission have been noted a couple of times. There were 2 visits to Planning Commission in relation to the rezoning, and then there were 3 for the preliminary plat. And then to this city council, I believe twice with the preliminary plat before this council approved the preliminary plat. By approving that preliminary plat, you told the developer, go and design something that looks like this. And they did. So they've come back to you now with infrastructure plans designed for what you told them to do, the preliminary plat, and with the final plat that will solidify and record and create those lots in the alignment that, again, you told them to do with the preliminary plat. So the substantial conformance process is really for you to check that what you told them to do in preliminary plat, they've done.
Okay. Thank you. That's a very helpful explanation. Jiska.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
So back in 2000, was it 18? You said that
I believe
the council approved the preliminary plat
in 19. Yes,
in
that's
19.
correct.
Okay. And I know that there was some objection to lot sizes changing, but it is a planned area development, right?
That's correct.
So it said that it's either or.
So under the planned area development requirements, item D in the list says that it has a not more than 15% change in each individual lot. So we have to look at each one, unless it's a planned area development, in which case that 15% is not applicable. So you could change it by 20% or you could change it by 5%.
Okay.
If you look at the changes done to each individual lot, in almost all cases, they're at or below that 15% anyway. But under the PAD, that's not an applicable consideration.
Okay. And John, what are we tasked to do today?
You have to make a decision as to whether there's a negative answer to section 2A, B, C, D, or E. This is a ministerial decision, meaning you don't have any discretion. It's yes or no. And the Mayor Pro Tem asked, what would be the next step? I could tell you a potential next step is going across the street to the courthouse, because if you can't articulate the failure of 2A, B, C, D, or E and prove it, then the applicant is entitled to what's called the special action or ministerial or a mandamus action, old term, but it basically means, is it a ministerial act? Did you fail to perform your duty here? And again, the duty is can you articulate a failure, a no answer to any one of those A through E?
All right. Councilman Blair.
George, I hear a couple times from the residential folks up there that maybe there was a fast shuffle done by community development and these maps aren't accurate. Will you shed some light on the fact that the first map that you showed was indeed the map that the council approved in 2019? And
So-
as one of the members on this council in 2019, I say that it was. But I'm hearing from people saying the driveways were different, everything was different, and I don't see it that way.
The original submittal that went to the Planning Commission included a loop drive, but by the time Planning Commission made its recommendation to council, this was the alignment.
Okay.
This is the alignment that was submitted to you for preliminary plat approval in 2019.
So the only thing that's changed is the increase of individual lots that's called out
Right, and if
in the
you-
planned area development.
If you look at the two changes, preliminary plat, final plat, you can see the lots are slightly larger in all cases. In some cases, those slightly larger lots are incorporating a section of easement for slope protection, which will probably be a retaining wall to protect that lot from causing excess drainage down the slope. Everything on this site sort of drains to the north of the picture, up on the picture. And those retaining walls are incorporated in an easement to prevent property owners from doing anything to them later. So an individual owner buying one of these lots would not be able to modify that wall. And that protects the entire line of properties that have those walls.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Tenney.
Two really quick questions. The total area of the that's going to be developed is about 10 acres, roughly. Is that right?
Slightly more than 10 acres.
Okay, with about just less than 6 of that with homes and streets on it. Interesting. Okay, and then the other piece. Could we go back to the 5 criteria again? And I just want to see the percentage. More than 50%. Okay. So we're in this case. It sounds like we're not looking at a situation where the lots were increased by more than 15% anyway, but regardless of that, we're not in a situation where we're looking at that criteria. that 15% criteria because it's a planned area
The
development.
second half of that sentence says if it's a planned area development and it provides for at least 20% or more of open space.
Gotcha.
And that original language was actually under a previous code. Our current code requires at least 25% open space. In this case, it's more than 50% open space.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Councilman Good.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I've followed this development from probably the very beginning. Originally, I think it was 40 lots, then it was 37, then it was down to 33. I just feel that this is a really poorly planned and almost a dangerous development here. That hairpin turn at the bottom of the hill, especially during snow or icy conditions, is just very, very disturbing to me. However, we're in a position now where, those considerations have lapsed. Our only decision is whether the preliminary plat meets the criteria here for a final review, and every single check mark indicates that it does. So I think we are in a awkward and a unfortunate position where we're going to have to approve this because it does meet that criteria. But I've been up on that hill, and it's adding this a number of additional cars and vehicles, particularly under challenging weather conditions, I think is something that we're going to be sad to have to approve, and the community and the neighbors down there are going to have to deal with it. I think at some point we're just going to have to work on that road, guardrails or something to at least keep the potential accidents to something that isn't going to be terribly serious. But I just realize that we don't have a whole lot of choice here because it does meet the criteria, and unfortunately the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think, didn't do a diligent job of trying to get this in some condition, probably a lower number of lots. But it's just a terrible location for, you can't call this high density, but in this location, there's a lot of homes here that are certainly going to deliver a lot of vehicle traffic. And at least now where there's not that much of it, the chances of collision or some other minor traffic concern is kind of a more realistic expectation. But here we are with a situation where we're just kind of handcuffed. So I share your concerns, people in the community, but this is a situation where we're kind of stuck. So regretfully, I think we'll have to move forward.
Any other questions or comments from council? All right, I accept a motion at this point.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve final plat of Bradshaw Hills, a 33-lot planned area development subdivision.
Do I hear a second? I'll second the motion. We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 5-1.
Item E, please.
Approval of RVP 21-002, a revision of plat for Antelope Crossings, Phase 5, Tract T, creating 3 new residential lots.
Sucks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a revision of plat. Subdivision plats, once they've been approved by you and final plat stage, can be amended. The amendment process is considered a review and readoption of a final plat, so it follows the same review process for staff and for you as if it were a final plat. That is, it comes directly to you for action. In this particular case, this is part of Antelope Crossings. I have a slightly out of date aerial photo because there are a lot more houses up there right now than show on this photograph. Only one small area of the Phase 5 is actually being amended by this proposal. That is the small area, this to show, small area here. Tract 1 was an open space tract and retention area. If you recall, I'm going to go backwards to the aerial photo. There was a number of sections of the roadway along both sides of Willow Creek Road in this extension that were wider than were originally needed, and some of that property went back to the adjacent property owners through an abandonment process. In this particular case, they're using the abandonment process to incorporate some of that excess property to keep Tract 1.
Excuse me, George, I still don't know where we're talking about here. Could you go back? Are we talking about up here or?
Right here.
Right there. Oh, okay. I thought it was on the
revision
curve.
vicinity and the tract are right here. And that Tract 1 is, again, adjacent to property abandoned from Willow Creek Road.
Oh, okay.
Earlier this
Alrighty.
year, I believe. So again, the tract is here. And the proposed realignment process would create 3 lots and extend the tract out here. So this tract would still contain drainage facilities and provide some open space, but it's now reconfigured and somewhat smaller. So the creation of 3 additional lots is the key trigger to this. By creating additional lots, you have to get basically an approval for the final plat all over again. The difference between this approval and what you just went through with Bradshaw Hills is there is no substantial conformance question before you. This is a change, and it does require council to consider and take action on whether to amend the plat to allow the additional lots. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have, and I can provide some additional photographic evidence, if necessary, of the conditions up there.
Thank you, George. And just to clarify, the addition of these 3 lots does not affect the cap that Deepwell has on how many residential units.
No.
It'll be incorporated in
it removes 3 additional lots from the reservation that they have. So the water comes from the reservation that Deepwell has.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes. So this is the entrance here? Is that into the subdivision?
Yes, that's correct. It's a right in, right out at that location.
Well, do you think that there's going to be any visibility problems if there's a house right there on the corner?
The house location is actually, see if I can get, excuse me, would actually be, this is the first lot created. This area is the same as on the previous plat. You can see here, it's a tract with a sign easement for a sign. Keep in mind that we're showing rights-of-way widths and lot lines, not necessarily the actual pavement of the streets. This pavement continues out to the point where it connects with the pavement of Willow Creek Road, and the lines, the stop points, and the visibility would be judged from the actual pavement out here rather than these parcel lines. So again, the first lot would be here. This tract for signage and a portion of that tract would remain the same. You can see the basic alignment looks the same. There's a minor change in the dimensions, and then that tract 1 is what's really modified. So those 3 lots are here. The tract that buffers the roadway from the first lot remains, and then tract 1 here again is reduced in size and pushed a little further out. Again, also preventing additional construction development closer to Willow Creek Road.
Plus, if it's right out, you would be looking the opposite direction, correct?
Correct. So it's a right out for northbound traffic at that point and a right in for northbound traffic.
Hey, George, I don't think that's right. That's Lone Elk, and it's a lighted intersection. It has all traffic movements.
You're right. I apologize. It's the next intersection up that I was thinking of. This is the one that's a right in, right out.
Correct.
This one is a signalized intersection. I apologize.
So this has traffic
full
light on
full turning movements and traffic signal. That's correct.
And no home on the corner.
And no homes on the corner.
So
Correct.
this is the track we're talking about, right?
That is it. Yes.
And also, I thought they changed the name from Antelope Crossings. Is it still called? I thought it had another name to it.
We plat subdivisions with a particular name, and that becomes the official legal name of it. And then for marketing purposes, they call it something else. So it's had
So this
several
is
different
Saddlewood,
names.
actually.
Yes. So for marketing purposes, they've changed the name. The actual plat is still
Okay, so it's Saddlewood that we're talking about here.
or Antelope Crossings.
We don't want to mention the antelope.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Really quickly, just to clarify, my paperwork says Track T, and it appears to be Track T there. We've been referring to it as Track 1. Are we just not able to see that?
It's the same track.
Gotcha.
It's
Okay.
being modified from the larger track to a longer, narrower track.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Any?
So I have a question.
Okay.
We're abandoning our right-of-way so the developer can build 2 more homes. Three more homes.
3 more homes. It wasn't the purpose of the abandonment. It was because we didn't need the right-of-way.
Right.
But they're using that additional right-of-way to create the Track T.
So the city doesn't get any benefit from that abandonment, and the developers.
State law provides that if the city abandons right-of-way, it goes to the adjoining property owner. So if it abandons the whole right-of-way, the adjoining property owners meet in the middle, basically the middle of the right-of-way, and each gets a half. If we abandon the right side or the east side, it goes to the adjoining property owner as a function of law. There's no sale of it.
Well, as long as we're not just giving it away.
Well, we literally are. I mean, that's the point. We're abandoning unnecessary or unneeded right-of-way. It was determined, presumably in public works and traffic folks, that we no longer needed the right-of-way, and so an abandonment process went through. And I believe an easement or an abandonment ordinance was adopted by the council in order to actually effectuate the abandonment, probably some time ago.
Right.
And then this is a sort of result of that, but there is no connection.
And interestingly, because this is a realignment of Willow Creek Road, we acquired.
This doesn't increase the total number of homes.
No. It's all within the 10. It's all within the deep
allocation
well
of water.
cap. Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from council? Any public comments, Sarah?
I do.
Okay.
Ralph Hess has raised his hand and would like to speak. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Mr. Hess. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Good afternoon. Just to follow up on the exchange between Mr. Palladini and Councilman Good, that was a question that I had. I had looked at the agenda memo, and the background portion referenced the fact that the city had abandoned the right of way, but there was didn't provide many details with that. And the question I had specifically, now that Mr. Palladini's offered his comments regarding the state statute, is a city code provision of Section 8214 talks about the city, when the city abandons a portion of the public street, that the city can determine what consideration is required in order for the abandonment. And so, but I think that applies if an individual seeks abandonment, or if a property owner seeks abandonment. And since it was unclear in the background information as to what the details were with how the abandonment of that portion of Willow Creek Road came about, I was questioning some additional details on that.
I can address that. Ralph is right. If a property owner requests an abandonment of a city right of way to expand his or her property, then that's correct. We can determine whether or not there is a value in that to abandon that to the benefit of the of the adjoining property owner or adjoining property owners, depending on to the extent of the right of way. In this case, it's my recollection that the city staff determined that the right of way was no longer necessary for that Willow Creek Road portion, and therefore city staff initiated the abandonment, and then the state law is triggered about, like I said, essentially going to the adjoining property owner without cost. It's a shedding off of unnecessary right of way, essentially.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Councilmember Rusing.
So essentially, we're just giving 3 lots to the developer, and it looks like we left some money on the table.
Well, let me just say this: that even if they requested,
we had a choice.
Well, no, even if we had abandoned the parcel at the request of the developer, you can only sell it for the dirt value. And so I don't want to give anybody the impression that somehow we should have got part of the vig or piece of the action for the presumed profits that he might make on adding 3 lots. I mean, the dollar per square foot or pennies per square foot, even if we'd sold it, would be just that. It wouldn't be a share. We're not partnering with the developer by abandoning some of that land. So again, that presumes that it was at the request of the developer, but in this case, it was not.
So we didn't have to abandon it. There was really no reason to do anything.
My understanding is
necessary.
We abandon easements we don't need.
We abandon rights of ways and easements. It's a common practice. We do it all the time when we no longer need it, because when we own it, we have 2 things at a minimum. We have responsibility to maintain it, and we have liability on it. So by shedding off of those unnecessary pieces of land by way of an abandonment, we shed off those liabilities.
And this is not adding any new residential units that this developer would have already had under his water rights.
Right.
Councilmember Tenney.
Really quickly, did we also abandon easement north and south of that section, or was it just that section? And
portions of the right-of-way all the way up to and including that curve were abandoned, okay. I think under the same abandonment that occurred.
Makes total sense. It wasn't specific
extra right-of-way we don't need, and as John alluded to, if we kept it, we just have to maintain it.
We have liability. That totally makes sense to me. If it was
and it was given to us by the developer free of charge, so there was no...
If it was specific to that area, which it's clearly not, I would have a concern that there's why we went about it that way. But it sounds like all along we.
Yes, sometimes when you're building a road, you take more than you need, so you have the flexibility to tweak with the alignment as the lay of the land, and then at the end of the day, what you don't need, you give back, because you're going to need the assistance of the same people again further up the road.
I think a little of that history is, though, when you go back, when we abandoned the original Willow Creek Road, we traded the new easement to Mr. James for the old Willow Creek Road, which is sitting out there that becomes part of his development.
Yeah.
So it was a swapping of lands for the realignment. So there's no money that changed hands ever.
Any other questions or comments from council? I would entertain a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Schall, I apologize. Mr. Hess has his hand raised again. I don't know if you want to. He was already given his time, but how do you want to handle that?
If he wants to quickly wrap up his comments, that would be fine.
Well, it's just unclear to me from the comments that have been made as to whether the abandonment, whether we know that the abandonment was at the request of the adjacent property owner, or whether it was an abandonment that was initiated by the city.
Let me just clarify. As you recall, remember how the curve on Willow Creek Road used to be more dangerous, and it's been flattened out. So there's a lot of realignment of the right-of-way of Willow Creek Road, so it flattened out that curve. And so we got some land out of from
Mr. Chamberlain to flatten out the curve and to realign the curve, and we abandoned land, subsequently that we didn't need. So this is not some sort of conspiracy where we're, giving Chamberlain 3 extra lots for free. This was a standard operation where we abandoned the lot, and Mr. Chamberlain determined that maybe he could fit 3 lots in there, and he's gone through the process to amend. So your decision is discretionary. Like George said, your decision to amend the final plat is discretionary if it meets with all of the other requirements for subdivision plats. But certainly the sort of notion that he's going to make a profit from it probably is not one of the conditions you should use to make your decision.
Thanks, John. So this was an abandonment that happened with the land up and down Willow Creek after the realignment.
And some time ago, and with a council action associated with it. So it's not on the agenda today.
Council Member Tenney.
And just to clarify, initiated by city staff, not requested by the
Because
property
it's not
owner.
needed at this point.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty. Any other last minute comments? I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve RVP 21-002 revision of plot for Antelope Crossings Phase 5.
Second.
We have a motion. Second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Alrighty. Finish it up, Tyler.
Yeah, I think there was a hint in that, Tyler. It wasn't really that subtle.
Take the time you need. It is nice to end on, such a pleasant person that doesn't bring us great news, but is nice to talk to.
Rarely do I bring you good news, but I can smile about it at least. Okay, here we go. This update is brief anyways. The House is still working on the flat tax proposal that I brought to you 2 weeks ago. Still, as we know, $1.5 billion income tax cut by doing a 2.5% flat tax bracket. The good news, however, is that progress is being made to hold cities harmless, meaning that the percentage shared with cities and towns would increase of the overall pie, which is a compromise that the League of Cities, and I think all of us could agree with. We don't want to tell the state how to manage their tax brackets and what they do, but we do want to be made whole and kept whole for our important services here. It's good news because we haven't seen any budget bills introduced yet, which I think means a compromise is being met and being worked out. So those are good things. Diving down, 2551, misconduct involving weapons. You remember this would add a lot of cost to us to provide security, metal detectors, personnel to our entrances if we didn't want CCW permit holders into the government buildings. It has stalled, and it's likely not to move forward simply because it would also have a fiscal impact on the state. So once they found out those numbers, which I haven't seen those, but I'm sure they're very high, they realized that's probably not something they want to take on right now. 2668, this is a strike everything bill that popped up about 2.5 weeks ago. It has to do with homelessness, really, and it would require cities over 50,000, which we are not there yet, but probably in the next few years would be, with a higher per capita of homeless than the state, to dedicate between 10 to 25% of state public safety grants, which we receive those annually for different services, especially in the police department. Those would go to establishing homeless outreach teams to enforce laws against street camping, among other things. And cities that experience growth in homeless populations for 2 consecutive years after that team is established would be ineligible for future grants. There's a lot of unenforceable policy in that, a lot of nuances that haven't been worked out. The League of Cities and a lot of other stakeholders are meeting with the Cicero Group, who's out of California, who's pushing this bill, and others to figure out some amendments. We also have the Ninth Circuit ruling that really makes it difficult to enforce street camping.
Yeah.
So this conflicts with all of that. John, I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, the Ninth Circuit case is called the Boise case. Basically, there's no such thing as laws against street camping. You effectively have to allow street camping for all intents and purposes. So this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Cool. So amendments are forthcoming, and we'll keep an eye on those to see if they help the bill, or the bill might not move forward at all. 1146, this is the motor vehicle dealer TPT exemption. It does not appear to have the votes. It's stalled, and the word is that it's not going to pass, which is good news. 2152, body camera redactions. This is in the same exact spot it's been for about a month. What I've heard is if it's stuck where it is, it's probably for a reason, and it's probably not moving forward. So that's the latest we've heard. But again, we're tracking it. The league is on it as well if it starts to revive itself. And finally, the tobacco bill. The big concern is that it preempts local zoning authority. And I sent you a bullet point list from the league that they prepared this morning. I know that the proponents of the tobacco bill are reaching out to individual council members of a lot of cities to try to tear them away and say, well, the city of so-and-so with council member so-and-so agrees that this is okay. And they're trying to create some chaos that way. So I wanted you to be prepared with the talking points, with the bullets, in case anybody does reach out to you. I'm happy to answer any other questions on that or any of these other bills.
Thank you, Tyler. Any questions or comments from council? Thank you.
I wonder if their chairs are softer than ours.
I think last time I ran the meeting, I left you with a Truman quote, so I thought I'd leave you with another one. It is amazing what you can do, what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. This meeting is adjourned.